There's a lot of things I want to apologize on my channel for. I promoted Dan Locke's high ticket closing program and neglected my romantic partner. I started creating these videos like don't do pharmacy. I didn't respect my relationship with you, the viewer. Whew, that's deep. In today's podcast, I'm going to be diving into all the mistakes I made on this channel, all the drama, all the controversy, all the major mess ups I made here. I was debating whether I should do it or not, but one of the things that I wanted to do this year is just have a closer relationship with you, the viewer. So many y'all have supported me all these years, and that's why I'm gonna name this, the working name for this podcast is the Friend Zone, because I just want to have an intimate conversation. That's why I'm in my car, not my studio. So there's 5 mistakes, and I'll leave timestamps below if you want to skip past any of them. The thing that really sparked today's podcast was I wrote down a few notes on my phone, but quite recently it was actually the 5-year anniversary death of my father passing away. And if you follow my channel long enough, then you know that was the real tipping point for me to leave pharmacy and just go into this crazy world of entrepreneurship. When I was in pharmacy back in the day, I was studying things like copywriting, trying to do YouTube, and I lived in a YouTube house. That's how most of you guys found me, because I used to live with Joe Jitsikawa and whatnot in Cannes and all that. That was a crazy house. Got plenty of stories for that. One of the inspirations for me leaving pharmacy was just my father. If you don't know my story, like I never really got along with my father for most of my life, but near the end of his life, I was telling him I was just so burnt out with pharmacy. And I'll talk about a little bit of the pharmacy drama later, but he really encouraged me on his deathbed. Like, you know, Kevin, you're really smart. You're really resourceful. If this is something that you want to do for it. You don't want to be like me, living with a bunch of regret. Little did I know he would actually pass away. That was our last conversation. When I actually transitioned into digital entrepreneurship or this like crazy online world, I had zero idea of what I really want to do. And I felt like my whole life was falling apart, especially with my pharmacy career coming to an end, which I chose, by the way. I had opportunities to jump on different, like, you know, do you want to be a pharmacy manager for this? Do you want to be an advanced practitioner pharmacist for this? We'll work you up there. I had dream careers in my hand, but I don't know if it was stupid, but I followed my heart. And I haven't looked back at all. Not gonna lie, still sometimes I feel the same way, where like I don't know what the I'm doing with my life, dude. Sometimes what I realized during this like crazy time for me is like sometimes you need these crazy life moments to push you in the right direction. Because if you're anything like me, I was just way too scared to actually like pull the trigger. I've been talking about leaving pharmacy for years and years and years, but I never did it. And especially if you're like myself, you never had a strong male role model growing up. There's no one telling you like, hey, take risks, be bold, take some time to really find your purpose, find your mission and execute on it, right? I never had that. These days I'm doing it for myself, but it took me years and years of therapy, self-reflection, a lot of heartache, a lot of trials and tribulations to kind of realize that. After trying a lot of different things like copywriting, digital marketing, affiliate marketing, which, you know, some of those fields, like it was really sketchy and it was really unethical. It didn't feel right. And I luckily never got deep into it. I just went into the research stage, but I eventually found what I actually loved doing and what I felt passionate about. And I only came to this realization within the last year or so. Since coming to Vegas, I've been really reflecting a lot. And what I realized, like what I was passionate about, was building relationships. It's one of the reasons why I started this YouTube channel. One of the reasons why I'm shooting this podcast after years and years and years of saying I want to start a podcast, but never did it. And it's one of the reasons why I got into inbound sales, and more specifically recently, just business development work. I think the real opportunity in inbound sales isn't being a closer or high ticket closer, whatever the frick you call it these days. Honestly, it's like starting up your own business, offering your own services, creating your own irresistible offers. It's very fulfilling to me. For me, though, YouTube was the long-term play, and inbound sales was the short-term play, so I could take on clients, so I could survive and not eat ramen, right? Yeah, I'm not about the preservative life or vegetable oil life at all. For this podcast episode, well, I could talk about all the lessons, about all the people, the values, the ethics that I learned. The truth is, more importantly, I've been thinking about like my mistakes on this channel. some of the things I didn't really explain to you guys as I was going through it. I just want to have a one-on-one conversation with you. No podcast guests, at least for an initial bit, and just talk about like what's been on my mind for some of these things have been on my mind for the last few years, but I just didn't know how to put it into words. You know how when people go through like traumatic events, there's a point in time when people are ready to talk about it. And to be honest, a lot of these things took years of therapy and reflection for even me to talk about like it publicly right now with you. I feel like now is a perfect time to talk about it because I'm in a good point in my mental health at the moment. Maybe I took it for granted in the past, but even if it's a parasocial, I was going to say paranormal, parasocial relationship, I respect our relationship so much that I feel like it's important for me to talk about, and I need to talk about it with you. And these mistakes, by the way, aren't like, I wish I worked harder or I made too much money. There's no humble bragging here. These are like things that still linger on my mind. But if you're listening to this, a major thing about what I want to say is like, there's a lot of things I want to apologize on my channel for. But let's talk about mistake number one. Let's just jump into it. Mistake number one. I promoted Dan Locke's high ticket closing program on my channel. Man, Dan Locke, whenever you say that, is kind of like the scarlet letter to not only me, by the way, that was in his program, but to a lot of people. I'm a bit torn because like in the program, I found some of my best friends and some of them are my business partners right now. Doing high ticket closing for me resulted me in like getting into more business development these days, being a partner, and I have an inbound sales advisory, and I help like agency owners, creators, and thought leaders with, structuring their sales conversations, structuring irresistible offers and all that too. And that's where I feel like the real opportunity is. Like, you learn the skills doing sales for clients, but you then realize like, oh, why am I not doing it for my own services? And there's so many subtle lessons of client relationships, everyday relationships, romantic relationships that you learn through sales. You pick up all these skills. Like, I feel like I listen better. I articulate my thoughts a little better. I take more time to just pause and reflect and just think a little bit more than I did in my 20s. If you don't believe me, just pull up some of my vlogs from like when I was 25 or 27 during my ratchet days. But anyways, to be honest, it's been a little bit of a dark history for me. To be honest, I had no idea like what high ticket closing was, or inbound closing, whatever you want to call it. It was just a recommendation from a friend, a really close friend, who told me like, hey, I think this will be great for you. It'll be a great experience. When I look at my videos back in the day, I was just like so excited at the thought of doing something new, especially in a time when I was grieving the loss of my father at the time too. And I was in whole shock about the whole pharmacy firing thing, which I will talk about later. It was such a great experience to me that I actually ended up shooting a review video. And I was just really, really excited to share something that meant so much for me, that was so important to me. But here was the problem. I started integrating a lot of my content in my personal stuff, and like people started thinking I was working for Dan Locke and stuff when I never did. And then Dan Locke had this really, like, he started neglecting fulfillment, started being like a ClickFunnels bro, and just like increases of prices and making promises that he couldn't keep. And I was really torn at the time. His program, by the way, was really, really great in the beginning. It was such a strong community of like top performers. I met like, most people when they hear high ticket closer program by Dan Locke, they think about all these young kids who are spamming them and all that, but it didn't always have that connotation or like reputation before. I met lawyers, management consultants, partner level people who had like really great business presence and stuff, and a lot of reasons why they took I met doctors and stuff like that too with similar backgrounds. Actually, some of my friends like here in Vegas actually went through this program. It's scarlet letter for us. We never talk about Dan Locke's, but I met really, really cool people. I just felt like that community, I just wanted to share it with other people and just be like, hey, yo, it's pretty solid. Obviously, I can't confirm this, but I think for him, it's like, I've noticed this from my clients. Like sometimes people get like really hungry for revenue and they get a taste of what it's like, and then they just focus on scaling, and they lose track of what they promise a lot of their audience, Yeah, there was a shift in his program. It just felt like he no longer cared about his students. He promised like us gigs, but he never, while I did see the effort of him trying, it just never worked out. he just, rather than like doing the right thing, he was always upselling. First it was like inner circle, right? And then it was like high ticket millionaire, which I only did like 1 month of it. I was like, nah, I'm done. And then I stopped giving Dan Lok my money ever since. And then it came to a point when I heard he was raising his rates and all this bad publicity. I was like, I don't know. Like, I was feeling some type of way already, but I never publicly announced it because I just don't want to be that negative person out online sometimes, right? Ironically, even though I did Don't Do Pharmacy, that I'll tell you why I did that, by the way. He was no longer someone I want to associate myself with or be a part of. And it's kind of funny, like I said earlier, if you talk to anyone who was in his program, it's almost like the scarlet letter. And there's actually some famous YouTube people out online who don't talk about their Dan Lok like history and stuff, but are really popular YouTubers. But there's like, I guess, this growing sense of shame, like saying that you took this program because they associate like, oh, you got conned and stuff, right? But for me, I've always loved learning. I've always loved personal development. I've always loved like business and just learning things, right? I don't think you should demonize that sometimes, you know? But anyways, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I felt kind of ashamed that I tied my name to a ClickFunnels bro. You know, like 2 Comma Club, 2019 or 2018 is all about 2 Comma Club. And it's kind of like, I just look at myself, I'm like, damn, I was just so freaking naive. Sometimes you don't know the harm that you're doing because your intent is good, but you don't realize the impact you're making in the field. While I always told people like, hey, you know, like you should do your own due diligence. There's a responsibility that I feel that influenced a lot of people into the program. For the people that it didn't work out, who got in later in the program, you know, I broke their trust. Relationships are probably the most valuable currency that we have. It's more than monetary like currency or anything like that. And if you know me, like relationships are everything. I preach it all the time. It's one of the reasons why I shoot like videos, personal videos to people. I'll jump on calls with people even though I have like zero business intention with them too, because I just love connecting and I think it's such a powerful thing with parasocial relationships leading to IRL relationships. If you're one of those people, hey, I just want to say I'm really sorry for that. You know, while I can't resolve the actions of myself like almost 4 or 5 years ago, I will say if you bought Dan Lok's under my affiliate link, I am planning to do like a redemption cohort of some sort or some like masterclass free training. Like this is not a webinar, it's not a pitch fest. It's like generally what I've learned over the last few years, and I just hope that might be helpful for you and just to build that relationship. So yeah, just DM me on Instagram or shoot me an email if you're one of these people. Even though I don't have to, that wasn't my program that I did. Like I did vouch for it, and that is my name. It's my responsibility that goes on it. And so I want to find some way to make it right. The one thing I am proud of that moment though is a year or two later, I shot that video about why I left Dan Lok's, and I believe that was the right thing to do. Looking back, if I ever encounter someone like that, I should do it a lot sooner. I think there was a optimistic, hopeful, youthful side of me, like being like, oh, I hope this guy would change, right? Because I met him in real life. I went to Vancouver. I met him at his event, and it was an amazing event. Like it was still like, honestly, out of all the events I went to, it was one of the most memorable events I went. And it wasn't because of Dan Lok himself, but it was because of all the people I interacted with, and I made so many friends. And to this day, like a lot of us are still friends to this day. It's weird. I feel like this program changed my life, but it wasn't him that changed my life. It was the people that I met that changed my life. The lesson here is that I learned that I should be more mindful about the partnerships and the people I associate myself to, especially if I'm ever doing a promotion. Like ever since that time, I started being very, very wary of like what I was promoting on my channel. Like I go through a vetting process. I buy their program. Like if I buy a program, I pay out my own money. If I do software, like I really do in-depth like reviews and stuff. And so the most important thing is to respect the relationship between you and myself. And if a mistake does happen, or like someone like Dan Lok does change their ethics, does change their business model, I need to step out sooner. And I also needed to communicate that to you guys too, right? because I look at this as, even though it's a parasocial relationship, I view you kind of like one of my friends, but just from afar. It's my responsibility. And even though it wasn't out of ill intent, it's still my responsibility to resolve things sooner rather than later. Okay. So I didn't think I would go on so long about that, but mistake number 2, projecting my values on pharmacy and entrepreneurship onto you. As I was reflecting on like the last few years, I noticed like the change in like the vibe and sincerity of my channel after like my dad passed away and I was going through all that stuff. As you know, there was this like youthful energy that I used to have when I was 26, 27, shooting these like YouTube videos like I am now, where it was just like giving out my heart, doing fun things. And even though I'm not that young, youthful, like 25 or 27-year-old anymore, a lot of those values are still really, really important to me. Like I have a vision of giving zero cost education out to the world, especially on inbound sales and entrepreneurship, creating offers, like personal development content. It's really changed my life. And as I was pivoting and diving into inbound sales and marketing, I realized that I was starting to hold a bit of resentment towards pharmacy. And I started creating these videos like don't do pharmacy, which a lot of things I said I still hold to this day. Like people still go through burnout and all that. But to give you a better background of like what happened with my pharmacy career, I'm going to just dive into it. Like my old employer, they discovered my YouTube channel, which was talking about pharmacy. By the way, I wasn't, I was never like hidden about it. When I got hired, people knew I had a YouTube channel. Actually, it's the funny thing is like I used my YouTube background of doing market analysis to get the job. Like I was like, this is how I'm going to beat out the competition of all the pharmacies in the area. I was doing market competition, market research. I was taking a very entrepreneurial type of approach at the time too, because if you watch this, you probably know me as like the don't do pharmacy guy. At the time, I was pretty PC. If you look out at all my pharmacy videos, like up until maybe 2017, I didn't have anything crazy. I was mainly talking about things about how do you get into pharmacy school? How do you date like after pharmacy? What is it like being a pharmacist? Something I realized about corporate companies, and I'm not saying all corporate companies, but definitely in the pharmacy community, from my experience, is that a lot of them are toxic environments. Majority of the people that I encounter are pretty miserable. They're just doing it for the paycheck. They're under debt. And when you graduate, very few people, right? I don't want to say everyone, maybe there are a few people, but very few people are just like, oh my God, I really want to work for the big chains when I get out of pharmacy school. Like no one's like that at all. Why is that? The environment is pretty toxic, right? There's like problems are swept under the rug. There's a huge culture of corporate gaslighting. Everything is your fault because you're not working hard enough. So it's no wonder why I see so many people just like burned out. People hate their jobs, and something no one talks about a lot, right, is like one of my pharmacy supervisors, he actually ended his life. And they're like, what the heck is going on? And I guarantee there's a lot of people that kind of feel the same way. So that's why I shot that video of don't do pharmacy. Going back to like my career, at the time I was doing the best I could. I was like the poster boy of like the company. I was getting invited to dinners and all that. I would win awards to be recognized. And, a part of my identity was like that high achievement. I wanted to work harder, so I got recognized. Looking back, it's kind of stupid. No, I don't want to say kind of stupid, but it was kind of foolish for me to identify my self-worth with the corporate interests, with these arbitrary goals that don't even really benefit me in the long run. And to be honest, like I would do a lot of unconventional, in order to get to the top, I would do a lot of unconventional things like hosting events, building relationships with doctors in the area, and just doing a lot of startup ideas in terms of like market research in general. I've always been really inspired by innovative people, progressive people, like who have unique bootstrapping ideas. And at the time too, if you ever saw me, like I used to have designs in my head. I'm bald now, but like I used to have the eccentric personality, let's put it. One of the things I learned is that there's this term, I've been reading this book. Hold on, let me pull it up. So I'm reading this book called 10x is easier than 2x. It talks about this concept of a rate buster. And that's kind of like when someone is kind of breaking the mold, doing really innovative things and kind of a top performer, people are scared of that, especially in a very conventional stable career. And what I learned through that experience was like when you do things like differently or think things differently, not everyone's going to really like that. And when there was new management change, I sensed that the people actually kind of hated me or like threw shade at me. You know, with the new management, I just noticed things like they were always passive aggressive toward me, and they hated that I was a top performer. Like too, I remember this, right? They're always critiquing me, and like whenever I needed help in the pharmacy or needed certain things, they wouldn't at least make the effort to help resolve my issues that I brought up. And I would here I was busting my ass, like trying to send weekly reports when no one had to. I just wanted to improve the communication and resolve issues. To be honest, like looking back, I was pretty very, very naive. Like people straight up probably didn't like me. That's the corporate politics I freaking hate. But like, just because someone doesn't like me, that's not a fireable offense. But if we fast forward a few months, like almost to the end of 2017, my dad is in the hospital. My mom gives me a call to like, hey, your dad is in the hospital. Get ready to fly across the country because dad might have to undergo surgery. To this day, it really breaks my heart because like, if you don't know the type of person I am, like I'm a workaholic, but it really breaks my heart because I asked my mom like, dude, how serious is it? And then she was like, it could be super serious, but I'll let you know. At the time, I let my DM know. I was like, hey, there's a good chance that I might need to go take care of my dad and go on FMLA, which is like the Family Medical Leave Act. And I told him that he's in the emergency room. This freaking DM to this day, it shows you, I don't know what this person was going through, what they had against me, but they decide to bring up my YouTube channel to a vice president and of the company and deem me as a threat. They told me, like I remember on my termination letter, they wrote like unprofessional misconduct, and they said violation of editing videos during my company policy hours. And while it was true that I would edit at like my videos at my store like during my lunch break, which is a paid lunch break according to a union, yeah, they dinged me for that, which was bullshit. And I realized like, you know, no matter what I did, they were going to find a reason to terminate me. And by the way, I was unionized too. The union did jack to defend me whatsoever. I remember that day too, because I was working my ass off and all that. And I remember them being like super, super vague about like, oh, can you come into office? And I was like, the corporate office? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, what is this about? And they're like, oh, just something that we need to talk in person about. In my head, it's like, oh my God, I don't know what, this does not sound good. It sounds like one of those girlfriend talks, those breakup, like girlfriend, boyfriend talks. I was like, oh my God, it feels like this, right? And so when I walk in to the office, there's all these screenshots and videos of like me and my YouTube channel, my Instagram, all out on the table. I remember stepping into the office and how I felt, and they were just saying like, oh, so you have a YouTube channel, what if you go viral? And in my head I was like, well, what's really wrong with that? And they're like, well, what happens if they find out that you work for this company? How would they view our company? How would they protect our company? How does that help our company? And I realized that at that moment, even though I was like generating numbers for the company, even though my approach was a little different from a lot of normal pharmacists, even though I was like, I don't want to say a go-getter, but I was like a go-giver, right? I was just trying to do the best I could, just serving the people around me, my patients and all that. And I just felt so alone and stuff. And I was like, I realized that they viewed me as a threat because they thought I would hurt the brand of that corporate company. Not gonna lie, I look back at those moments, and after that conversation, like I felt like I did something horrible, like in terms of freaking, like, I don't know, kidnapping babies and like organ harvesting or something like that, right? That's how I felt. I was feeling the effects of like corporate gaslighting, even though at the time I didn't know what corporate gaslighting was. And by the way, if you hear a huge tractor thing, I don't know, this guy's like literally driving by me. They made me feel like a horrible person just for having a YouTube channel, even though like really I can't really think of a solid reason that they had that violated my channel, or like I can't think of something that I did like justifiably wrong. I'm not saying that they're a company, they can do whatever they want. If they felt like I wasn't a good fit for the company or all that, that's fine. But I just remember that intent, like that DM who really went out of his way to bring my YouTube channel at that moment when my dad was like in the hospital. And like, honestly, I think about how scummy people are. And I think like that guy, that supervisor, is like the scum of the earth, honestly. I still look at that 5 years later. And there's like, you can tell there's trauma, there's hurt, because I sacrificed so much for this company. So much of my blood, sweat, and years. It embarrasses me because I missed out on birthdays. I missed out on a lot of events just for the 9 to 5 and chasing this 9 to 5 dream and corporate lifestyle. And so if you like, I hope this gives a little context of how I was feeling at the time when I shot these videos. I don't know. I don't wish any bad or harm toward people, but I do feel really hurt by that moment. Yeah, like I just felt so angry at the time. I felt like they had the balls to like fire me, and they had the balls to pull up my stuff right when I asked for FMLA to see my dad. To be honest, this probably could have been a huge lawsuit. But at the time I was just going through the grief of losing my father. So I just let it go. So basically I started going on different interviews at the time, but didn't feel right. I felt like, because I felt like I was a horrible person for having a YouTube channel, and I knew I wanted to keep on doing YouTube, I felt like I couldn't have a job at any corporate place. And maybe that was an assumption I made at such a young age. Yeah, which leads me to the YouTube channel, right? All of a sudden I became like supercharged and angry, and I was like, why should I do pharmacy in the first place? Like, I felt all this resentment. Like, you put all this work into this career, right? And then they support you at your highest. They like give you all these incentives, invite you dinners, give you gift cards and all that. And when they no longer need you, when they view you as a threat, they don't even talk to you. I never even got a single warning or anything like that. They just kicked me off to the street. And so at the time I was like, so I'm just going to talk about all the things that me and my pharmacist friends talk about behind the scenes. And, but my friends can't say it because they have a 9 to 5 employer. And even though like I don't take back any of the words that I said, like in my videos, like all of it, I truly, truly meant. It could have been delivered better, but the one mistake I did make was like tying it back to one of my favorite books at the time, which goes back to the mistake number 1, F.U. Money by Dan Lok. And I was like, oh, what the fuck? That was such a bad idea. And looking back, I really could have taken a more tactful approach, which I did end up doing on my second video, which didn't go as viral. But I think about during this time, I was talking about pharmacy because I had such resentment toward my career, and it just gave me such a bad taste in my mouth because I gave so much of my life, so many of these experiences for this career. What I didn't realize at the time was like, just because I have a bad experience with something doesn't mean that it's a bad experience for everyone. And I look at that video and it's like, that's how it came off. And I've been debating whether I should take it off, leave it on, because it does lead into my second video, a more polished video, but I'm not even sure if people are actually getting to it. And so the lesson I learned from this experience was to not project my values onto others using my YouTube channel. Just because I value entrepreneurship doesn't mean that other people can take the same risks, or like other people should start a business. I'm telling you right now, most people probably should not start a business. Like, if you want to make money, if you want freedom, every business is different, don't get me wrong, but there are things that I love doing, and there are things that I freaking hate doing, like in my business and stuff. And sometimes if you're a service-based business, like you're tied to clients that, not saying that you don't like, but sometimes there's an aspect of the work that aren't the most fun, like taxes. Who the frick likes doing taxes? I don't. I really like structuring deals, like client engagements, and like firing people. I don't like firing people either. That freaking sucks. But the thing is that everyone has the right to autonomy. I think I was in full survival mode at the time, and I felt like it damaged a lot of like our relationship, you and me. If it hurt you, if like you're watching this and you're like, If you're still here, thank you, right? After that whole period. But I'm really sorry if I really hurt you during those videos too, because for so long I was promoting pharmacy, and all of a sudden this kid, he talks about don't do pharmacy. It seems out of the blue. And then the third mistake I made on this channel, focusing on quantity, not quality. And so one of the things that YouTubers talk about is just like pumping out videos every week to stick to schedule for the algo, right? And I think during the 2018 to 2020 era, I was just really trying to find myself. And I never really explained it to you guys. But since I was no longer like a YouTube pharmacy channel, I was trying to find myself, like try to find my purpose and dive into other niches and try other things, right? I did things like personal finance, treadmills, Mont Blanc pens, random reviews. Something that I didn't keep in mind that really kind of sucks looking back on it was like, I wasn't thinking about serving you guys. What would be helpful for you, my current audience that, you know, spends their time like going through my feed. To be honest, I don't think people are just like, ooh, it's another Kevin Yee video, right? Like, I don't think people are like that or were like that. But to be honest, I think about like a sense of abandonment with my subscriber following. And when I look back at that era of like content, I feel a bit of shame. Yes, I was talking about Dan Lok a lot, high ticket closing. And I produced a lot of videos that I actually don't really care about. Yeah, it's just so low quality. I had a discussion with my good buddy about this, but he was like, that's part of your growth. But the way I look at it, I was like, you know, I was very selfish. These were like very low quality. They just pumped it out, wasting people's time, not very well thought out. And I don't know, in some sort of way, it was very representative of my life at the time. I just felt so lost. And there was a resistance of like, I don't want to be stuck in a niche like I did pharmacy. Like I talked about pharmacy for so many years, and then I got burned, and I didn't want to go through that experience again. And that's the traumatic aspect of like being a YouTuber, that sometimes things change. Sometimes your view counts like fluctuate. Like these days, my videos used to get like a good amount, like a few thousand. Now they're lucky to even get like 1 to 200 to 500. But the one thing I am proud of these days, you know, these days I'm so proud of all my videos. Each and every video is like better and better and better. And even if it only reaches 500 people, like those people are diehard fans, and I know I'm serving the right people. And so the biggest mistake I made on this channel was not communicating and never announcing that, you know, you're probably not going to see any more pharmacy videos, even though I have a pharmacy video on ChatGTP coming up very soon. But you're probably not going to see as many pharmacy videos because I no longer want to talk about pharmacy, and I'm no longer practicing pharmacy, even though I'm still registered and all that. So all those rumors saying that, oh, Kevin is not a certified pharmacist, he got his license taken away. If you look up my license, it's actually active. So anyways, I just renewed. Yeah, so like the biggest mistake was not communicating that I wasn't going to be shooting anymore. But if you're still here after all that discovery phase and all that, and you're still watching my videos, you're still watching this video, I just want to say you are the true homie, because like I seriously appreciate you just like sticking around, like seriously. And when I look back over my videos over the past year and even this year, every single video I'm just really proud of. You know, I had an epiphany like during last year where I was like, when it was like during the time I moved to Vegas, when I asked myself, like, if I die tomorrow, would I be proud of what's on my YouTube channel? Like seriously, would I be proud of it? And then that's when I decided to really focus on making the best videos I ever could. And these days, a lot of thought goes into my videos. Like I don't just whip out the camera and just vlog. Sometimes I do, just like for my personal self, but there's a lot of thought and intention that goes into these videos. The production and quality in my team has gone up over every single video. And I know, in my opinion, some of my videos these days like don't have the raw like connection like this type of video does with the personal touches. So that's why I decided to do more of a long form podcast, because this is the stuff I actually really enjoy. I enjoy just like talking to a camera like this. It's very therapeutic doing this too. Anyways, speaking about like personal stuff, the other thing that I screwed up on this channel, mistake number 4, I neglected my romantic partner. So all turn the background, what you see. So you're seeing all these random videos, you're seeing these inbound closer videos, and you're like, oh, Kevin's associating himself with the scammer, right? All this in the background while I was looking for clients, building a new business, like dealing with the loss of my father, and like there's a lot more crap that happened in the way too, by the way. As I was taking on new clients and trying to find my way with YouTube, I had someone very, very supportive in my life, and I just didn't appreciate her at the time, unfortunately. And so you might have seen her on this channel. There are bits and pieces I never took down, but I was in a situationship. Like, yeah, I was kind of like a fuckboy, honestly. Like, I didn't want to commit. But with my ex, I'm going to call her my ex, but we were in that for 5 freaking years. And it was because I was very avoidant at the time. There are personal reasons why I was a little bit like hesitant toward that, but after 5 years, if you still don't know if you want to be with someone, like, you're just wasting someone's time. And like, this person she was so supportive. She would plan like Disney trips like with me, or plan surprise birthday parties for my, like, when after my dad passed away. She even remembered my dad's death anniversary and took me out to dinner and planned a really special dinner. She's very thoughtful. You know, these days I think about like God, source, something bigger out there. Like, I think about like, I really needed someone that like that at that period in my life at the time. When you lose your father, when you lose your identity as like, what are you? Are you a pharmacist? Are you this and that? When you lose everything like in your life, your identity, you feel so lonely, like no one cares about you. I think a lot of people would just be like, yeah, you can talk to me about anything. But when it happens, you're just like, I don't even know what to say. In fact, I don't even feel like talking. And I think like at this time, as much as I hate to look at it, I really needed some sort of therapy or some sort of help, you know, and I took a lot on her. And when I look back at myself, I can see I was just like going through a lot, you know, like one of these days, I journal a lot, and I think about like how to humanize myself, how like a lot of other people would probably feel the same way that I did. And a big part of my lack of commitment wasn't because I wanted to date the hottest ABG or see other women, even though in my head I was like, oh yeah, what happens if there's a hotter girl or anything like that? The real truth is, like, when I reflect on it, is like, I felt so empty in my life at that time. My gut, it was telling me to find myself. Like, I needed to find myself before I dated anyone, because I didn't feel like I was good enough. Like, this constant value of good enough was played into my pharmacy career, and now it's playing into my love life too. And I felt like, since I was saying goodbye to my old life, dealing the grief of like saying bye to my old career, that I needed to be a man and just figure out my life again. Not gonna lie, I think that's the problem with us men sometimes. It's like, we forget that life isn't so transactional sometimes. We forget about the feminine touch, the power of like unconditional love, that people can love you for who you are, not what you do, which is something that I want to seek in my life. But in some sort of way, there was like a self-sabotage there. It's kind of like when you look at your puppy, right? Like, we have a family dog, his name is Bobo, but when Bobo looks at me, Bobo doesn't ask, hey, what do you do? And then judge me like for like my self-worth. But Bobo looks at me at who I am and how I love. Like, I'm always smiling when I see Bobo, and I want to take him out on a walk that he gets exhausted by every single time. And, you know, like, it's like that. It's like motherly love too, right? Like, most mothers, they love you for no matter what you do, and that unconditional love. At least my mom was always like that. I kind of had that love at that time, which I didn't appreciate. Like, it's easy to look back and be like, oh, you should have appreciated it and all that. But the biggest lesson I learned here is like to not let work get in the way, to really prioritize relationships. It's important to lead with gratitude and prioritize the people who prioritize you in their life, which is something I neglected. Because like right before I moved to Las Vegas, the person I'm referring to, like my ex, she ended things with me. And like a week later, I remember, man, I was chilling with my friend Athena at the time, and I was like, man, I just closed at $20,000 in deals, which was like the most I've ever made in inbound sales at the time. But I remember asking myself, like, dude, what's the point of this money if I have no one else to spend it with? what it felt like at this time. Like, I just realized I was just like in such a survival state. Myself now, going back in that time, I wish I could remind myself, like, Kevin, what if business didn't have to be so stressful? What if you didn't have to work all the time? What if, like, there's a life outside of your business? Your business isn't everything. And what I realized is, like, if you take away all those relationships and you have no one to spend it with, no one to enjoy it with, no one to experience life with, your business means jack. It means nothing. I thought that was very, very profound. And by the way, if you're watching this, you know who you are. I'm just really sorry for all the pain that I caused, and I genuinely hope you're doing well these days. Whew, that's deep. Let's go into mistake number 5 and we'll wrap this up. The theme, I would say, for this whole video is mistake number 5. I didn't respect my relationship with you, the viewer. So if you look at my YouTube channel, you can see that I haven't been consistently posting. And I'm sure there were times when you took the time out of your day to send me an IG, a DM, an email, and I just didn't respond, A lot of times, like, when people don't respond, I'm just like, hey, I totally get it. Like, you don't need to apologize and stuff. But there is a sense of guilt I feel. Like, a part of me just felt like, yes, I was very, very burnt out at the time. But a part of me just felt overwhelmed with all the parasocial relationships and all the stuff that was going on in my personal life that I just wasn't ready to talk about. As open as I try to be, like, there's certain things that I'm just not ready to talk about. I mean, it took me 4 or 5 years to actually talk about everything that's on the table right now. While I do believe it's important to do the self-work and fill our cup first, it doesn't give me an excuse not to respond and leave a personal touch, at least to the best of my ability, and just let you know what's going on in my life and communicate more, right? I think sometimes my YouTube channel is very representative of me. Like, there's a lot of potential. There's some big hits, but in general, I do a horrible job at communicating, and I'm really, really sorry for that. Especially as a creator, I don't think I've been doing it very seriously enough. Like, I don't think I've been taking my business seriously on YouTube. And when I say business, I mean like the business of creating like amazing relationships with you. And that's the beautiful thing about YouTube. It's like I can monetize without even asking for a freaking cent from you. It doesn't cost you anything, maybe some ads, right? But it doesn't cost you anything. And people create like full livings on this, right? And like, it's just beautiful. Over the last like few months after getting back from Vanessa Lau's mastermind, I've been pretty silent, and it's because I've just been trying to hire the right team on the back end and trying to figure out the new strategy that I feel great about. It's kind of crazy that like I'm trying to pay for people's livings now, like through my channel, and just instilling the vision. And so going forward on my channel, my goal is to provide zero cost personal development and inbound sales strategy education. I still want to have these like very real talks and keep everything super personal and high touch. But my personal goal with this channel is just to build more parasocial relationships that will lead to more in real life friends, IRL friends. I think about all the people I've met in real life, and some of you guys watching my channel are some of my best friends now, and I appreciate every single one of y'all. Like, just the fact that I can build business relationships, like personal relationships, people from all walks of life. It just warms my heart. I really do appreciate you guys. And so, while I also know it's not scalable in the long run, now is the time where I can just leave a personal touch with every interaction, every email, every DM I have. And I just want to let you know I appreciate you watching this, like even up to minute 59, something like that. I appreciate you so much. You guys are true homies right here. And when I think about like the closest in real life relationships I have in my life, most of them started off like this. You listen to a video and commenting or DMing me. And there's just like so many more people I just want to connect to on YouTube. Anyways, I love to hear from you. How did you feel as going through everything over the last few years? Are you confused? Are you upset at me? Are you pissed off at me? Please be honest. I've been doing a lot of reflecting, and I know like I've built up some haters for my controversial views, but just know that no one is perfect. Like, I'm not perfect for sure. I made a lot of mistakes, but if there's anything I can do, if you were hurt during this time, hey, I just want to say I'm sorry. And anything I can do I don't think there's any way to make it up, right? But if I can do anything to rekindle that relationship, please let me know. Anyways, feel free to drop a DM or a comment on YouTube. Love to hear from you guys. And it's kind of funny how everything comes back for full circle. My first YouTube video started exactly like this in my car, and this new chapter of this like podcast I'm doing on a more consistent basis is happening right now. Man, this is beautiful. Anyways, guys, I'll let you guys do whatever. Please let me know how I can support business, personal, anything, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace. Whoosh.